On July 17, 1952, a feature film called Carrie was released based on the novel Sister Carrie by Theodore Dreiser, directed by William... Wait a second. Oh, sorry, wrong movie. On November 3rd, 1976, a feature film called Carrie was released based on the novel of the same name by Stephen King. Ah, Stephen King. A very bizarre mind, and one of which I will be visiting again later on down this list. The story follows a young girl called Casey.
It's Carrie White.
Who is heavily bullied amongst her peers at school. Now, I mean the worst case of bullying of all time. To the point everybody hates this girl. From generic bullies to teachers to her own religious mother. Her mum has taught her Jack and shit, and Jack left town to visit a fairground whilst banging your grandma, causing Casey
Carrie
to freak out in the school showers when she hits her first red river. The girls then abuse her and throw tampons at her. I did originally ridicule this for how silly and over the top and unrealistic it is. But my best friend, who's a female, has confirmed that the women's locker room is actually a very sick and dangerous place. This scene is apparently very believable and very realistic. Wow. Her mother preaches fake quotes from the Bible and claims a red river is a sign of sin. So she's never had one?
They're all mistakes, children. Filthy, nasty things. Glad I never was one.
The main bully is a bitch queen called Chris, but amongst her clan of evil tampon monsters is a girl called Sue who starts to feel bad and sympathise with Casey.
It's Carrie.
So much so, she asks her boyfriend to take her to the prom instead, as she deserves a night of pure happiness. Her mum tries to disallow her this because boys are evil. So how was she even conceived? It doesn't make much. And her mum later reveals that she was raped. Oh. Moving on. But Casey...
It's Carrie!
reveals that she has telekinetic powers and takes charge. Meanwhile, Chris no-shows detention and gets suspended and banned from the prom despite her lawyer father's best efforts to get it overturned. Hell-bent on revenge, however, Chris now has other plans for prom and along with John Travolta here, slaughters some pigs. Did they mention they're evil? Ooh. They dump a bucket of blood on her, humiliating the poor girl before she goes crazy apeshit.
Trust me, Carrie. You can trust me. Trust me, Carrie. You can
stop making fun of me.
So I guess you could say she got a little bit carried away. "600 subscribers, here I come." She then returns home, consoles her mother who then tries to kill her before she suddenly remembers that she has superhuman powers and literally crucifies her. Casey
Carrie?
Then suddenly and cleverly and metaphorically sends her house crumbling to the ground. Sue visits her grave before they decide to inspire Friday the 13th just a few years later with a fake-out cliffhanger dream ending that they can completely rip off. The very first novel to be published from the genius author with a boner for his home state of Maine was Carrie, released in 1974. It was his first published but his fourth written. He was actually so broke, he wrote this book whilst he was working in a $1.60 an hour job in an industrial laundrette and living in a trailer using a portable typewriter. It started as a short story and he originally threw the first 3 pages in the garbage. King claimed at the time, "Some woman said, you write all those macho things, but you can't write about women." I said, "I'm not scared of women. I could write about them if I wanted to." So I got an idea for a story about this incident in a girl's shower room and the girl would be telekinetic. I did the shower scene, but I hated it and threw it away. His wife Tabitha actually got the pages out of the garbage and encouraged him to continue, which he did. King admitted he only persisted because he had no better ideas at the time. He actually thought that he had written the world's all-time loser. Little did he know that Shia LaBeouf wouldn't actually be born for another 12 years. He wasn't even sure if he should publish the book in the first place. He felt like out of all of his manuscripts, it was the least marketable. He literally finished the novel and then put it on the shelf before beginning work on Salem's Lot. However, after the success of The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby in previous years, he decided to go for it and send Carrie away for publishing. He received a telegram in March or April 1973 offering publication and he immediately bought a new car. On May the 13th, 1973, Mother's Day, New American Library bought the paperback rights for $400,000. The hardback sold a mere 13,000 copies, but the paperback released a year later sold 1 million in just its first 12 months alone. King was offered a tiny $2,500 for the film rights. A friend of his passed the novel on to director Brian De Palma, who loved the story and wanted to find out more. Upon research, he discovered that nobody had actually purchased the rights to the book yet. Several studios were considering it, but nothing was concrete. De Palma showed great interest, but nothing will happen for a further 6 months or so. Stephen King was very happy about the choice of De Palma, however, as he loved his 1972 picture Sisters. Lawrence D. Cohen was brought on as the screenwriter and, with his first draft, produced a script very close to the novel's original material. United Artists accepted his second draft, but only with a $1.6 million budget, which was actually quite low, considering this was around the time when horror movies were becoming a huge thing, and the book itself was quite popular as well. The budget did increase, but only to a slightly more $1.8 million. Art director Jack Fisk was working on the movie, and he convinced De Palma to let his wife Sissy Spacek audition for the lead role. The director's first choice was Betsy Slade, based on her film Our Time, and Melanie Griffith was also considered, but Spacek was so determined to land the part, she backed out of a TV commercial she was due to shoot, rubbed Vaseline in her hair, didn't wash her face, and arrived in a sailor dress with a hem cut off that her mother had made for her in the 7th grade. This got her the part. Amy Irving, who played Sue, was lucky enough, or unlucky enough, depending on how you look at it, to be cast alongside her real-life mother Priscilla Pointer as, here's a stretch, mother and daughter. Nancy Allen, who played Chris, was the last to audition just as she was on the verge of leaving the land of Hollywood altogether. She would end up marrying director Brian De Palma. Isidore Mankowski was brought on as the director of photography, but drama began between him and De Palma, that rhymed, leading to Mario Tosi taking his place. Weirdly enough, the school that they used to shoot in, the land that it was built on, was originally owned by a couple called Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher. Ryan Reynolds' parents? No, Carrie Fisher's parents. Much less cooler, but props for irony. Carrie Fisher. There was originally an opening and closing sequence of the house being bombarded with stones hailed from the sky. However, there were constant mechanical problems and they had to cut it out, replacing it with a fire at the end instead. The closing scene that, Friday the 13th clearly stole, was actually inspired by Deliverance, and it was shot backwards to make it more dreamlike. Now, Sissy Spacek had insisted on it being her real hand coming out from below. De Palma wanted to use a stunt person because it would have literally involved burying her underground. Sissy didn't care, so she was actually buried alive for that sequence and did so without any complaints. The film was very well received and widely considered one of the best movies out of 1976. Rotten Tomatoes gives it a 93% rating and states, Carrie is a horrifying look at supernatural powers, high school cruelty and teen angst, and it brings us one of the most memorable and disturbing prom scenes in history. Roger Ebert called the film an absolutely spellbinding horror movie as well as an observant human portrait. Pauline Kael of The New Yorker called it the best scary funny movie since Jaws. I'm not really sure how a shark eating people is funny. Or how Carrie is, now that I think about it. And a teasing, terrifying lyrical shocker. Susan Schenker from Take One magazine claimed she was angry at how Carrie manipulated her to the point where her heart was thudding, and embarrassed because the movie really works. In 1998, the movie guide called Carrie a landmark horror film, and Stephen Farber from New West magazine stated it's a horror classic, and years from now it will still be written and argued about, and it will still be scaring the daylights out of new generations of moviegoers. Quentin Tarantino placed it as his 8th favourite movie of all time, which isn't really surprising. The dude really likes blood. However, every film has its haters, as Andrew Saris from The Village Voice proves by stating, there are so few incidents that 2 extended sequences are rendered in slow motion as if to pad out the running time. Or to add dramatic effect to the storytelling. Running time. The movie earned $14.5 million by January 1978 and was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, Sissy Spacek and Piper Laurie for Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress. The movie went on to win the grand prize at the Avoriaz Fantastic Film Festival, while Sissy Spacek again won the Best Actress Award by the National Society of Film Critics. In 2008, Carrie was ranked by Empire as the 86th greatest movie of all time, Entertainment Weekly named it the 15th best high school movie, and the American Film Institute put it as 46th on the 100 greatest cinema thrills. Bravo listed it as the 8th scariest movie moment for that scene. Stephen King himself loved the movie upon release. The film changed the ending to the book dramatically, but King admitted that he actually preferred the movie's ending to his own. But then he gets pissed off when the movies change the details from the book. In fact, he also went on to say the entire movie is much better than his novel. In 2010, 34 years after the film's original release, King stated that the 1976 movie is dated and hasn't aged very well, but it's still a damn good film. In 1999, The Rage, Carrie 2 was released. Why put the title of the film the wrong way around? Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, The Rage, Carrie 2. It's stupid! In 1999, The Rage, Carrie 2 was released. Sue was the only reprising character to return, played again by Amy Irving, and it featured another teenager with telekinesis, supposedly sharing a father with Casey.
It's Carrie White.
From the first movie. The film sucked and it flopped at the box office. In 2002, we got the first of 2 remakes. It was a television movie starring Angela Bettis in the lead role. The movie begins with police interrogations after the prom incident, which was a nice twist, asking witnesses about what occurred, which intersperses with flashbacks of the story. There's a twist at the end, turn off now if you don't want to know, where it reveals Casey doesn't actually die. She survives, fakes her death, and Sue sneaks her out of state to start a new life. This enraged a lot of people as it went directly against the source material, even though it was okay when the original film did that, but it was supposed to set up a TV series in which Casey,
It's Carrie!
and Sue help others with the same abilities. This series never happened, and the movie was categorically panned. A few years later, Eric Jackson attempted to gain rights to make a stage production of Carrie the musical, but it was rejected. Jackson then went one step further and actually earned consent from Stephen King himself to make a new, non-musical production in 2007 with Sherry Vine in the lead. Many other unofficial spoofs have been made over the years, one of which is actually called Scary the Musical, which hit the Illinois stage in 1998 and then brought back in 2005. In 2011, it was announced that a second remake was in the works. Roberto Aguirre Sacasa, who had previously adapted King's novel The Stand in a comic book form in 2008, wrote the screenplay, calling it a more faithful adaptation to the novel, despite it copying almost every single scene from the first film, making it almost entirely pointless. Almost, and I'll get to that. But if it copies almost every scene from the original, how is it more faithful to the book? The lead was played by Chloe Grace Moretz. Okay, so Carrie, a girl who is supposed to be an outcast, a weirdo, someone set aside from the rest, different, strange, peculiar, nobody likes, you can just tell, oh, she's different, she's weird, is now played by someone who's clearly attractive and realistically would never be bullied. Now, I'm not saying that attractive people can't be picked on, but this just does not fit the character whatsoever, and I will happily state that this is one of the worst casting choices I have ever seen. I love Chloe Grace Moretz, hit girl, amazing, she's an incredible actress and she does good work in this film too, but she just does not fit the character. She looks more like a Disney actress than a scream queen. Stephen King himself wasn't too happy about this remake, stating, "The real question is why when the original was so good." However, he pushed to have Lindsay Lohan in the role, and unbelievably, Megan Fox was even considered. So everybody can say that they want to bang Carrie? Sissy Spacek was even considered to play Carrie's mother, which would have actually been a nice touch, but the role went to Julianne Moore. Directed by Kimberly Peirce, and it was released on October 18th, 2013, receiving mixed reviews from critics and fans respectively. Now, for this review, I actually want to discuss all three films. I want to go over the differences, what I feel like each movie did better or differently, and what I prefer, and just cover all of that stuff, because this is a rarity, actually, because it's a case of I actually really like all three films. The shit sequel doesn't count. The first one is a classic and focuses on being a lot more subtle, which I'll always respect more. Sissy Spacek was the best interpretation of the character in my mind. Although she's cute and innocent, seriously, she's freaking adorable. You can buy her in this role as a shy, bullied loner. Although it's true that they didn't dive into the bullying aspect of the plot as much as the 2013 version, that's exactly why it's more effective. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I was bullied every day at school, and it was a difficult period of my life. From nursery up to when I left education almost 10 years ago, I was heavily picked on. I grew up with a best friend who I have known since I was 3 years old. We went to every single school together, and she had no idea how much the bullying was really affecting me. I tried to kill myself when I was 13 years old. That's how bad it was, but of course I put on a smile and nobody knew just how difficult it was for me. I even confronted some of the bullies years later, and they have said that they didn't mean anything by it and didn't think of it as that much of a big deal. My point is, although the film is based on her, with the exception of the sequences with her abusive mother, it's mostly told from the point of view of the school, the bullies, the teachers. We see the shower incident, but we don't see how truly psychologically scarred this girl really is. That's what bullying is all about. They don't actually see how much they're hurting her. Sissy Spacek's performance carries, no pun intended, this movie with her subtlety alone, and it's incredibly well done. The 2013 version shoved it down our throats that she was bullied to the point it was laughable. It was a constant reminder, whereas here in 1976 it was kept simple and therefore that much more shocking, heartbreaking and impactful when she snaps at the end. It's done incredibly well, and yes, in my opinion, the story is told much more cleverly because of this approach. The 2002 version, Carrie was played by Angela Bettis, and she was fine. She was great at capturing the sympathy from the viewer, but, well, even in the innocent scene, she looked kinda scary. She looks like something from The Grudge, and that was before she lost it. She was good, but nothing in my opinion compared to Spacek. Chloe Grace Moretz did a fine job, and I don't actually blame her. The actress refused to watch the previous film so she could make the character her own, which I actually admire her for. She did fine with what she was given, but I feel like it was the casting itself that failed. Overall, Spacek was the definitive Casey.
Carrie.
It's a weird one because the original film had Chris the bully be absolutely sadistic and evil. She really hated the poor girl with very little reason and was hellbent on revenge. In 2002, it was actually her boyfriend manipulating the situation. Chris just goes along with it out of fear, but you can tell that she doesn't want to do it. She actually feels bad, and it's a weird take on the character, but it's quite refreshing rather than just having her be this cold-blooded bitch queen. In 2013, they kind of did a combination of the two. She was a massive dick weasel, but was also pressured by her boyfriend, but still did the prank, although she quickly fled out of fear. Admittedly, I have to give it to the 2002 version because because it's a much more real personality. It's not just, I am evil, let me do mean things. She has a very human feel to her, and she even pretends to befriend Carrie early on in the film and turn her against Sue. That is pure evil, but it's actually realistic from a teenage girl's point of view, and it does make you feel even more for Carrie. Sue was fine in 76 and 2013, but I just felt like the character wasn't adapted on as much as 2002. This one had a lot more substance.
Too much substance.
And by lying to cover up a disappearance and even helping her get away makes her a much more likeable friend and character, backed up by the great actress Candice McClure. The teacher, Miss Desjardins, though her name changed in the first movie for some reason, is a strange character that often grows difficult to like. Even when she's seemingly the only person other than Sue to stick up for Casey,
Carrie.
She then has random bitch moments where she too insults her.
I knew how they felt. See, the whole thing just made me want to take her and shake her too.
Stick to the slow songs. She'll look stupid dancing to anything fast.
When you show up to prom with Carrie White on your arm, don't you think you're gonna look the tiniest bit ridiculous?
Bitch. But the least guilty of this is in 2002. She's much more badass and much more likable. She confides to Carrie that she also hated school, and they really bond. You really grow to feel like she's actually sticking up for Carrie and actually cares about her.
She'll look stupid dancing to anything fast.
For the most part. Carrie's mother was always a batshit insane psychopath, and I believe that nobody captures it quite like Piper Laurie in 1976. Don't get me wrong, Julianne Moore is fantastic, although a bit fucked up.
Maybe it came from Daddy.
He gave me a cancer. I thought you were cancer.
But Piper Laurie is incredibly deranged. It's like if Miss Trunchbull had a daughter. Although this came out first, so maybe she's Miss Trunchbull's mum? It would explain how Matilda got the telekinetic powers. It's weird because Piper Laurie was convinced that she was starring in a dark comedy. She found her lines and the direction she was given to be so over the top and ridiculous that to this day she is convinced it's still a dark comedy. I felt like it really worked, and she's one of my favourite villains of all time. The principal was a minor role, but none can top the O2 version. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a massive bollock face, no doubt. He purposely mispronounces her name constantly throughout just to be a prick. But this principal gets the win simply for how badass this scene is where Chris's dad tries to get her unsuspended and allowed back to prom. Now, there's only really two more characters to discuss, and that's Billy, Chris's boyfriend who helps her plan the whole prank, and Tommy, Sue's boyfriend who takes Carrie to the prom. In the original, Billy was played by John Travolta in an early role, and he sucks. No, really, like, really bad.
Don't be in such a hurry. I'm hurrying away from you, you know that?
Can you believe this is one of the films that got him recognized?
I thought I told you never to call me that.
Jesus Christ.
Yes, ma'am. We's doing the best we can. We really are, boss.
He is so bad, but to his credit, it was years before he actually learned how to play the villain. He wouldn't learn that for
the next 100 years.
However, it must have been in the job description or something, because in 2002, Billy was played by Jesse Cadodi, who has had very little acting work since this, and it really shows. He's awful as well.
It's a good idea.
It's a bad performance. Jesus Christ, he has less emotion than a potato.
Totally good joke.
Thankfully, they learned their lesson because in 2013, he was played by Alex Russell, and finally, they found somebody who could actually act. This one isn't much competition. In the original, he was just kind of there. Even right here, it doesn't even look like he's supposed to be here. In 2002, his acting ruins everything he says and does, and here, as explained, he's the mastermind behind the prank and can actually act behind it, so no contest really. 2013 wins. And now for Tommy, who was originally played by William Katz, who looks like Heath Ledger before Heath Ledger was Heath Ledger, despite the ridiculous 1970s hairstyle. Not even the 70s should have allowed that. This is my favourite interpretation of the character easily, and here's why. So many high school films constantly turn to cliches, and if the original film was made nowadays, Tommy and Carrie would have fallen in love and gotten together. Here, it's nothing more than a nice deed from Sue and Tommy. Granted, the 2013 film had Carrie openly admit that she knows he doesn't feel that way about her, and she's okay with it and grateful. That was a beautiful new addition, but I love the fact that they're just at prom, nothing more. It's just a nice act from one friend to another. In the original though, what separates it is that Tommy actually wants to be there. In the other two versions, he's pressured into it, like constantly. Jesus Christ, just let him take her out because he wants to. Why remind us constantly that he doesn't? In the original, he's talked into asking her out, but that's it. He takes her out, and then, I won't lie, these two are completely adorable together. He's a gentleman and is incredibly sweet and treats her the way she deserves, so when we finally see her smile, it's really nice to see. They share a kiss, but it's between friends for a good night and nothing romantic. It's beautifully done and made perfect sense. He was treating her nice because he was was just a nice guy. He didn't need any further motivation. He didn't need to be forced to do it, and it really helped her build her confidence and finally smile for the first time. The other actors weren't bad, and nor was the script, but I feel this was again more subtle and more reassuring because of his genuine likability. And now the prom scene. You know, it's amazing that with 3 on-screen adaptations of the novel, not a single one actually follows the book. So shouldn't we hate them all? I mean, that's usually what people do. In fact, in the book, not only does she gain telekinesis, but she also gains telepathy. She's able to read minds and send her own thoughts into other people's heads. So for films that are so accurate to the book, how come none of these included any of that? Anyway, in the novel, after the prank, Carrie leaves the prom completely humiliated. Once outside, she remembers her powers and locks the doors. She then messes with the sprinklers and causes chaos whilst watching from outside the windows. I get why they all opted to keep her inside during it, but it's weird for each one claiming they were following the book more closely. I mean, everyone hates the 2002 version, but it was the only one who actually kept the novel's ending of Carrie stopping her mother's heart with her powers. Which, by the way, is so much cooler than just throwing knives at her. The prom scenes are fine with all 3, but 2013 really ruins the entire character in one sequence. See, the first 2, the original specifically, it was made evident that she could not control her powers at this point. It was so ominous and eerie, but her murdering people was beyond her control. The 2013 version, she completely knows what she's doing. How are we supposed to get behind and sympathize with this character who's now choosing to willfully butcher everyone? What, because they bullied her? That makes it okay? So I guess the Columbine killers are heroes and all the bullies had it coming? It just doesn't fit the character and ruins the ending for me. I can't pity someone who's going out of their way to slaughter their entire school, no matter how harsh they've been. She even does this to Miss Desjardins. I don't give a shit that she lets it go. She does this to the one person defending her. All in all, the original's prom scene built up the suspense before the prank so well that when it actually happened, it was far more devastating and heartbreaking, and you know, she wasn't a cold-blooded killer. Now on to overall thoughts and summaries of all 3 films, including any final criticisms.
Yo, woman now. Why didn't you tell me, Mama?
I thought the tits would have been a bit of a giveaway. Why is this girl dressed up like Mario? Seriously, I need to know.
Now I want you all to know that you did a really shitty thing yesterday, a really shitty thing.
You said you wanted to join in. Okay, so once the shower incident happens, everyone's punishment is literally a week's detention. A week's detention? They deserve a longer sentence than Hitler for that shit. I do feel in this one, it often hits unrealistic mode by having everyone being stupidly evil.
And spit out that gum.
Where'll I put it, Miss Collins?
You can choke on it for all I care. Just get it out of your mouth.
Ah, The Secrets Behind Miracles. A book about how my ex-girlfriend managed to get me. Also, why is she reading so freaking slow?
To move or to cause changes in objects.
Today, Junior?
Okay, so here, the couple argue and insult each other before, making out. Sadly accurate. And yeah, I can't get a text back.
Billy. Billy. Billy.
Just gonna say it. He must have a ridiculously small cock if she's able to say his name that clearly with it in her mouth.
You know you can't go without a date.
Wow, way to make people feel like utter shit. This rain looks awfully fake. Here, just watch this terribly timed cliche.
I've been invited to the prom.
Prom.
Dad, the road to school.
School? And I'll let you pull the rope when the time comes.
I plan to.
I know.
Sex. They mean sex. This guy clearly misses his cue on delivering his line.
Ernest. Listen, tonight's prom night and everything.
This dude looks like a pedophile uncle in that suit.
They're called breasts, and every woman has them.
My ex didn't.
Just sit there, Mama, and don't say a word until I'm gone.
The fuck would she talk to herself after you've left for? The hell is this woman doing? This shot is done so well, but unfortunately I feel like it tends to go on a little too long and it makes the viewer feel dizzy and more sick than anyone who's watched the Blockbuster Buster review. This extra looks bored shitless. Maybe it's because I just mentioned the Blockbuster Buster. So Sue spots the bucket, and bear in mind this footage is sped up. It takes her forever to do anything about it. Look at it! Jesus Christ, tell her! Tell someone! Even worse, the teacher sees Sue, and can clearly spot her looking at something. Instead of glancing up to see the bucket or anything, she just kicks around out for, I guess, I don't know, having no date, and doesn't listen to her pleas of Carrie is in danger. The visuals are insane during the massacre, and the editing is flawless.
Release the evil. Too much evil.
The bullies do, however, shift into maniac mode and go from stupid high school prank to flat-out murder. I also feel like this version lacked development on the telekinesis. I think they could have expanded more on that, which the others did better. All in all, this is my favourite of the three. It has problems, sure, but it has an intense feel to it, the music and final editing especially. In 2002, I actually liked the interrogation concept. It delivered something new and benefited the plot twist at the end of her survival. It also helped massively develop Sue's character. I honestly don't understand why the film has so much hate behind it other than not following the book, which neither other film did either.
From here with the split foot. Wait.
How is the kid not taken away by social services in this version? The film also tends to focus more on the religious side of things, which kind of perceives religion as a bad thing. I'm nothing more than a naughty atheist, but I respect any religious beliefs. This film upfront treats God and Christianity as evil. It's probably the Westboro Baptist Church's favourite film.
I want you all to know what you did on Friday was a really nasty thing.
Great dialogue.
Open your mouth one more time, and I'll plug you up.
Strap on?
You know a girl named Donna Kellogg?
Yeah, I know Kellogg. Every guy in school had a bowl of her cereal.
And that joke was terrible. It does have some awesome messages though, which shows that it's not just the victims or the bullies that lead double lives. Carrie does have some great dialogue though, and it further helps you sympathise with the poor girl.
Jesus loves everybody, Mama.
Well, other than, you know, people of ethnic minorities, women, homosexuals, people who don't believe, women who refuse to marry their rapist. Just saying.
Okay, if you knew how many people seriously thought you were gay, you wouldn't be joking about it.
They have a point, you know. Piss off. So, in this version, nobody tries to stop Sue from helping, but how is nobody noticing Chris? She's standing in clear view holding the rope. I do think the climax is a bit more intense than in the original. The floor gets electrified and everybody has to get up. It's really good stuff and comes close to the original, but not quite. And now for 2013. Phew, this is a long one. Thank everybody for sticking with me this long.
Honey, you don't have to protect them. What they did was unforgivable.
So remember that when Sue asks for forgiveness.
I'm not doing it.
I'm not acting.
Hey, Carrie. I was looking for you at the library because that's where they said you were, but you weren't there, so I figured maybe you were here.
Because popular, attractive guys have trouble talking to girls. Makes perfect sense.
Girls change their mind all the time.
Mandy! As much as I like her in this, Julianne Moore's scream here is terrible.
I'm having such a great time with you.
My acting is having such a bad time with you. It's also weird because in this version, Chris actually texts Sue to threaten what she's going to do to Carrie. Sue doesn't bother texting her boyfriend to let him know what's going on. Instead, she gets in the car and hopes to get there in time. She also gets kicked out by the teacher, but apparently you are able to go to proms now in America without a date. Proms aren't that big over here, so I'm not too sure, but apparently you can go there without a date now. So her being kicked out in this movie makes no goddamn sense. I do find it weird how she's still wearing a wedding ring for some reason. So this version does copy a lot of scenes from the original. I know it's a remake, but the 2002 one was its own film. I find this movie to be almost pointless because it's direct dialogue and very little changed other than production value. They give it an update, the bullies even upload footage of the shower scene to YouTube, because that's not against YouTube's terms of service. Is this the beginning of Unfriended? And even air the video during the prank at the prom. That's the only reason this was different. Better effects and 2 changes in technology since 1976. The rest is identical but not as good, so I feel like it shouldn't have even been made. Don't get me wrong, it's well made. It's not boring, it's enjoyable to watch, and I'd recommend it, but it's not as good, and in my mind, not necessary. The only thing it really did better was Billy, but the rest we didn't need. In 2013, it would have been cool and more relevant because it could now be perceived as a metaphor for a high school shooting, but in that case, it could have been any movie and not a Carrie remake, so in my mind it wasn't necessary at all. A great series of films, for the most part. I'd recommend all 3, not that one. But my personal favourite is the original and definitely a horror classic.
In the original film, you know, before the prom scene where everything goes fucking batshit insane, how many times did we actually see Carrie being tortured by her classmates. The bullying aspect was there, but I don't feel it was expanded on as much as it could have and should have been. And even one shot of her walking past a row of lockers with the words, "Carrie White eats shit," written on them.